If you are just joining us, this is not going to make a lot of sense right off the bat. The question that started this video was, do I trade support and resistance? Now, with that question, generally speaking, we're looking at support and resistance as trend continuation areas. So am I looking for buys when we get to areas of resistance? Am I looking for sells when we get to areas of support? And the answer to that is no. I do not trade these areas like that. I generally tend to avoid taking any kind of trades at these major areas of support and resistance. Let's get rid of these drawings. We're taking a look at these major areas. This is a major area of resistance. This is a major area of resistance. Here's a major area of support, and down here also, and resistance across the top here. We're looking at these major areas. Now, I will not be entertaining trades at these major areas, and I want to explain why that is. Now, before I get into that, I will entertain these types of trades at small areas like this. We have these little mini areas of support and resistance. They're so small, you may even want to consider them as micro areas of support and resistance. These become way more appealing to me, and I'll explain exactly how this works. When you're looking at a major area of support and resistance, you've got the market moving up, and then you get this pullback. Now, the market's moved a long way to get to this major area. Now, we get this decent sized pullback that moves the market away from that area. Now we have to move back up. In order to move back up to that area, you need buyers in here. You need a fair amount of buying power. What happens is at this area, you've got this area where traders are seeing that the price has been affected. When you get buyers entering the market, this area becomes a target rather than an appealing place to continue to buy. When you have a target like this means you're closing your positions. So if you've got a buy position in here, closing your position out here means you're selling. When you have a position open, in order to close that position, you have to do the opposite of what that position is. So if you're buying, closing that position requires you to sell it. If you're selling, closing that position requires you to buy it. So what's actually happening is, in order to exit your buys, you sell. That sell is going to put a little bit of pressure in the market at that area. Now, not only do you have buyers selling their positions, you have a new wave of sellers entering the market at that same area. So you've got sell trades being triggered because you've got buyers that are closing their positions, and you've got sellers that are entering new positions. So now you've got double the pressure to affect the market in that opposite direction. So I'm not looking to either buy or sell at major levels. Now, when it comes to the minor levels, I am much more willing to be buying or selling, and I will use those as triggers for some of the trades that I have. We take a look at this area in here. We've got a market that is moving up. It has reached this previous level. So we've got the market that is moving up, and we've got this area where we see there is resistance. And we do see that there's a small effect at that area. Now, what happens is that effect turns out to be very small. We see that there isn't a lot of selling. Even though we've got this really good area, the pullback is very insignificant. We don't have much of a pullback at all. Because we have a smaller pullback, we can understand that there is not very much selling, which means that the buying pressure will overwhelm that selling pressure. So from here, I'd be looking at entering a trade above this small area of resistance. So this candle here would get me into this long trade. I'd be looking at buying here simply because we've got this big buying pressure, very small selling pressure, and that's overwhelmed by more buying pressure. And that is going to trigger the trade and hopefully move the market. So when it comes to areas of support and resistance, I'm looking for the small areas if that's what I'm going to trade. Now, oftentimes I'm going to find that those areas show up at a moving average, for example. So if I throw this on, this is a perfect example. That exact trade is a perfect example of this. So what I'm looking for in this kind of market, in this kind of environment, I've got all the moving averages telling me that there's an uptrend. So I'm looking for the market to pull back into these averages. and then continue to move up. I'm either looking for a bounce off of that red moving average, or I'm looking for a move into the zone between the red and the blue one. So what we get in this area is a market that moves up and it pulls back into that red moving average. I do have an area of resistance right here. So instead of taking a signal as it shows up here, I may be waiting for it to break above this area. We didn't get a massive pullback like we have in here. So we didn't get this market moving away and then pulling way back to get to those moving averages. We had this market move up and then a very gentle, small pullback to those moving averages. So I want to see that that area of resistance is broken. Once we get a move past that area, then I could place the trade. Now, in the instance where we're looking for a bigger pullback, what I'm looking for now is possibly a zone trade, something like this. I'm looking for a different kind of trade type. It wouldn't be a support and resistance type trade. I'm looking for a close outside of that moving average. That will be a zone trade. And then I'd be targeting this window up here. We've got this big wick. So now I've got this zone where I would ideally like to be targeting. So as we get to that zone, the buyers are starting to sell off their positions, and that sell off makes that market move down. And if we take a look at this on the other side, we could probably find some super nice examples of sell trades. So we're looking at this in here, we see some nice examples of a market selling off. So let's take a look at some of that. Now we've got the same sort of thing happening here. We have this big push down and we get this small move back up, and it gets to that red moving average. We get a push down and a fairly small push back up in the scheme of things, and the price gets to that red moving average. Now at this point, this first one in here, this could be an area to sell at because we don't have much of a pullback. So if I mark this off, we get this low simply because we don't have a bigger pullback. If we had a bigger pullback, I'd be looking to sell into this low, but that's not the case. What we have instead is a very small, a very gentle pullback. It's not something that suggests there's a lot of buyers in the market. It's all sellers right now. So we get this sideways market as we find a kind of a balance. We have a little bit of an equilibrium in here as the market's moving sideways. So we have this low. When this low gets broken in either here or this area here, we can then assume that the selling pressure is going to take over and we'll see the market continue to move down. Now, if this is not the case, if what we're looking at is more of a pullback, and we see something like that in here, where we have the market has made a low, prices dropped into this area, and we've made a bigger pullback. Now I'd be looking for opportunities in here as the market has pulled back. This could be a trend line trade. This could be a zone trade. It could be a fusion trade. It could be a bearish engulfing signal. It could be any kind of setup. But the objective now isn't to sell support and resistance. It's to target support and resistance. This becomes more of a major area. So I'm looking to target this major area as opposed to selling through it. So I'll get my signal and then I'm going to target this area that we have already established is going to provide some support. And as we see this on the chart, what we're going to notice is we have this big push down, this continued push down. We're starting to slack off with the continued movement to the downside, and the market needs to correct itself. But you can see this process. You can understand how this is working. We get big move down, small move up. We see that there are few buyers. There's lots of sellers, but not many buyers. So that market move continued down is a higher probability. Now, if we go back a little bit, we see a big move down, a decent pullback. What's going to happen is this level becomes an area where we exit our trades as opposed to getting into more trades. So here we're looking at a target rather than entries. And if it's a target, it is going to have an effect on the market. Now this effect again is kind of like a halo. We're going to see that there's a window in here. So when we see this window, we can target around that window. Now that window would be something like this. We'd have this window or this zone. The buying pressure is going to happen before that zone, and it may follow through that zone. So if we get this market move down, pops up, and we have the market coming back, we've got this window where the buying pressure will start above the window as people are closing their trades. We'll see it continue to move into the window, and occasionally we'll see it continue to move below the window, and then the market will continue to move back back up. So we've got this wave of buying. Buying starts as positions are being closed and a bottoming out, maybe with smaller candles. We're seeing that buyers are coming into the market. So the sellers are closing with their buy positions and buyers are entering with their buy positions. And we're ultimately going to see that the market moves up. So I think that's about as simple as it gets. If I'm looking at using support and resistance as a trade, I'm looking at a price moving up, a small pullback, the market will more than likely continue to move up. Now, on the other hand, we get a big move up, a decent move down, we're going to find that that area now becomes a major area as opposed to a minor area, and we will have to contend with sellers. Sellers start piling onto it, which is why I try to avoid these major areas as breakout zones. I hope this makes sense, but this is the reason why I don't pay a lot of attention to these main areas of support and resistance. I look at these smaller, minor, or even at times micro areas of support and resistance if I'm going to place a trade using support and resistance.